I had a very interesting game with LopsidedBit. He is a relatively experienced Horde player. I guess that he plays for fun. I have seen him around quite a bit. So I open with e5, and my idea is to play d5 on the next move, if black allows me to. For example, after h6, I will play d5, and the point is that anytime black tries to open the center, I just close it. I just close the center. If he plays e6 instead, then I just close it again. Both of these kinds of positions would be really good for white because with a firmly established pawn on a 6 rank, it means that white can trade and create weaknesses in black's camp without sacrificing material. So sometimes it's okay for black to let white claim the center by maybe shuffling, and the reason why it's acceptable for black to do this is because black is not moving any of the center pawns. He's not moving any of these pawns here. He's just trying to put white into Zugzwang. See, the point is that white has to make a concession when he establishes a pawn on the 6th rank. So here black would just retreat king e8 and continue to shuffle. And as you can see, okay, here white can play g5 or white can play e6, but both of them come with concessions. The concession of e6 is that it allows black to trade twice on d5 and create a b8 square for the queen, which is a really good square for the queen because it can control d6 and it can also prevent the queen from getting trapped. For example, if pawns get to b6 and c7, it would be trapped on d8, but it would be able to escape when it's on b8. She can just go queen b7. So that's the concession for white when white plays this move e6, whereas the concession for playing g5 is that white is giving up material. But on the other hand, kind of prevents the knight from cleaning up, of uncramping himself. So these positions are quite cramped for black, but white lost material. So that's why the rook shuffle works, is because black is not trying to open up the center. Because when black tries to open up the center, white can close it without making a concession. So I open e5, and he plays a very interesting idea, c6. I have reached this against Simpa quite a few times. The idea is interesting because it does not prevent white from playing d5. However, there's some indirect pressure, so the c-pawn adds a little bit of pressure in the center, but, not enough to prevent white from playing d5. That's why the best move for black is either d6 or e6, because both of them punish white's d5 and create a lot of problems. So c6 allows d5, so it's not the best. However, it allows black to play d6 because now white cannot close the center. Because after e6, white would lose material. Black would just simply take on d5, and then after the trades on c5, white loses the pawn on d5, and the center is cleared open, and both c-pawn and e6 pawn are attacked. So this is no good for white. So instead of e6, I have to play e4 to guard the d5 pawn twice, and then black can follow up with a5, and then I have two moves, I guess. I can either play d4 or play e6. At first, e6 looks perfectly strong. Okay, we clear the center, or we close the center, and it's without a concession. However, black has a very concrete idea that is super interesting in this position. First of all, black trades on e6, and then after that he will trade on b4, and then after that he will trade on c5. So we can see that black opened the A file and isolated one of the pawns to c5 so that it's undefended. Finally, black will trade on d5. I guess he could trade either direction, and the point here is that the bishop will trade on e6, and then black will fork the two pawns on c5 and e6 with queen c8. White cannot save both pawns. Which pawn to save? You should save the e6 pawn. It would be bad to play d4 because black will be able to move the e pawn, and black will have a lot of squares for his pieces to maneuver because white's center is kind of neutralized, it's liquidated. On the other hand, after f5, white keeps a strongly advanced pawn on e6. However, there is kind of this concession that black can transfer to a waiting strategy, stalling, shuffling. So after d4 and queen c7 and something like, let's say, d3, black will start with h5 to prevent white from playing in the future h5, h6, then g takes h6, and f6. So h5 is a strong idea for black here, and then after white develops, black will simply shuffle the king. So something like this, white can just keep developing and black is just waiting. Okay? If we observe this position, moving the c-pawns is the only idea that does not really lose material right away, besides g6. Okay. After the c-pawns move, it's quite risky for white because kings should shuffle to c8, not to e8, because after b6, black wants to put the queen on e8 and undermine this a4 pawn. So here white has kind of ran out of moves. Although maybe after the queen goes to d8, he can push d6, I'm not sure. But if not c5, then what to do? Well, I guess you can go f6 and sacrifice material, but it's a concession for white. So white got a big center and everything, but he has to lose material in the future. So that's a very interesting concrete idea for black to kind of discourage white from closing the center, even though it looks like white should close the center. But after d6, I suppose, okay, after e4, a5, e6 is still playable, but maybe just simply play d4, threatening e6, because now you guard the c5 pawn twice. So now black probably is in trouble because what can he do, right? He can probably trade or something like this, I don't know. Maybe e6, and then maybe white is under slight pressure, I'm not sure. I would pick white here, but I think black is in trouble here. In the game, LopsidedBit chose c takes d5. So I take back, then d6. Okay, still preventing me from playing e6 because he just simply trades and nabs the undefended d5 pawn. So I have to ask myself, what is the opponent's idea? It's to trade off either direction and pick up the d5 pawn, which is undefended. And after I see that I have to defend it with a move like e4. So that's what I did. And then he plays a5. Okay, very natural. But I just played d4. Maybe I could try e6, but it's most likely to transpose into those same variations where he just sacrifices the bishop on e6 and forks queen c8. So I decided to go d4. And again, I think black is in trouble. So he trades on e5. I take back with the d pawn, not the f pawn, because I want to activate the most center pawns that I can, because it's better to keep more pawns on the sides for defense. He follows with e6. That's probably okay. I could play d6 here, but maybe he has some ways to put pressure. I'm not really sure. Maybe d6 is the best move here. But I was just kind of playing on the 5th rank just because of my mood, so I chose c4. Maybe it's not the best. E takes f5. I take with the e pawn. I know that that's the correct decision because, again, I want to activate all my center pawns that are far back. And if I play g takes f5 and he plays h5, it's really hard for me to move my king side because this pawn is always only defended one time. So less mobility. It's way more mobile to take back with the e pawn. So always clear the way for your hindmost center pawns. It's more freeing. You have more freedom that way. So he plays b6. It's pretty nice idea because it kind of exploits the fact that after c6 I lose material because he just wins the pawn on b4. However, in retrospect, I think this was the best idea for white. I think I should have played c6 and willingly given up the pawn on b4. I'm not too sure. I think white is winning here, though. I can just play c3, then d4. I don't really have to worry about this idea with h6 because I can just keep developing. If he trades 3 times like so, then I think white is much better. I mean, the thing is, I have this attack on the queen side coming because I have space on the queen side, and his side on the queen side is weaker than his side on the king side. So, okay. In the game, I just reinforced the pawn with d4. He took on b4 to open the file. I take back, and then I take back with the b pawn. And now this is where things get interesting. He plays knight d7. And this is a critical moment because I saw that if I play d6, then it's really uncomfortable because maybe he can play f6 sometimes. He can certainly find a way to liquidate the center. I wonder if he can even play knight b6, because if I take it, then he can take here and attack both of these pawns. I guess I should defend the d pawn. So e3, for example, then he takes. Okay, maybe white is just better here though, but I wasn't afraid of knight d6. I wasn't sure what to be afraid of. I just was afraid in general. Maybe he can play. I'm not sure. Like, can he play? Is f6 maybe the best move here? And then he takes, forcing me to take back with the f pawn. I don't know. Maybe I should have just played d6, but on the other hand, he always has this idea where he can sacrifice the knight, play queen a5, and then queen a7. And now I have problems on the d file because my pawn is still on d1, so I can't defend this pawn because I can't go b4 without dropping the a4 pawn. So I have to play like c6, I guess, but then maybe this allows queen c5. The center just looks like it's collapsing. I think knight takes c5 was actually what I was afraid of. Maybe that's the best move in this position, just knight takes c5 and queen a5. So my intuition told me, okay, play to attack, just play for the counterattack. So I chose the paradoxical c6, very interesting, because whenever the knight sacrifices on a4, it's almost guaranteed a win for black, because with the rook on a4, all he has to bring behind is a queen, and then he gets from behind. So I have to act really fast. But if we go a few moves in, so e4, knight takes c4, okay, that's the same idea as knight takes a4. B takes c4, rook takes a4, b3, rook a3, and d2, aimed against the queen a5 anyway, then d6. Just observe how weak his queen side is. There's only one defender on the queen side, which is his c8 bishop. However, okay, black is behind all the pawns in 18 moves, right? However, the queen on a2 is overloaded. She cannot both assist in the defense and eat all these pawns at the same time. She can try to serve multiple roles, like defending the pawns from behind while winning the material, but I make it impossible. So I start with b6. I think that's a good idea. She pulls back to a6. Maybe not the best move, maybe better to take the c2 pawn, for example, because I cannot play b7 because he just takes and takes on b3, right? So maybe I have to play here something like, I don't know, maybe I just play c5, and then if queen takes b3, I just play c3, and I'm still pretty stable. Okay, after queen b5, I'm getting kind of harassed here, right? But maybe I can just play, I don't know, just c7, but that does allow like a bishop d7, and then I have to somehow try to argue that I'm not losing here. Maybe sometimes a3, a4 is an idea. I don't know. Because if I kick the queen away from the defense of the b file, then I just push b7. But if he goes bishop b7, then sometimes I can play e6. Maybe not right now because of bishop takes, but let's say after queen takes f1, now I can play e6, and I have this huge threat of d7 that's hard to stop. So maybe that's the best way for both sides to play, but queen a6 was played, and I think it's a waste of time, because I can just play c4 here after the queen takes on f1, and now black needs like 3 moves to pull the queen back to the defense. So queen to d3 is tried, but it's not working because I defend the b3 pawn by playing c3, which also defends the d4 pawn. So c3 and queen b1, and just simply b4. And I think white forces a win because there's no way to prevent b7, which is what happened in the game, and he resigns. The queen side became so weak that maybe earlier on, like here, black should actually consider a move like knight e7 just to clear the congestion of the king side and activate the rook for the defense. So if I take the knight, then bishop takes, okay, f6, bishop d8, c5 or something, or I'm sorry, f6, take, and bishop d8, c5, and castle. Maybe black survives. Black has 2 strong defensive bishops. But maybe after knight e7 I don't take. Maybe I play d5, for example, but then that allows some ways to undermine these pawns, right? Because the c pawn falls, everything falls. So maybe after knight e7 I'm kind of screwed. Maybe the best move here is c7, but then it's like really weakened on the light squares, so I don't know. I have to somehow hope that black doesn't have a simple defense. Maybe better to play f6 here. No, I can't play f6 because they just trade 3 times, and I think black is doing better here. So, yeah, in the game, black lost because of queen a6, which is not the right defense because it allows me to cut the queen's oxygen, and the queen was doing nothing on a6. Better just to either pick the c2 pawn or play knight e7. I hope this was interesting, and thank you. That's about it.